All right, welcome everybody around the world. Welcome to all my subscribers. So this isn't good news to share, but it's the news. So strangely enough, I found this story out yesterday. It's being reported on the eastern side of the planet, but it appears that the Western news outlets haven't really relayed the story yet, which is kind of unusual, even as of today. Found a little strange, at least on YouTube. But usually, if any news story comes out like global news, it'll also be on YouTube and not just the internet. But nonetheless, most people, depending where you live, I guess, therefore you may or may not already know about the story. Some people have probably never heard it. But an update that I believe, well, an update that was relayed via many Eastern news networks yesterday was that the Arab League of Nations, the Arab League of Nations, um, recently, I think just yesterday, voted to declassify Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. Okay, now there are tremendous implications of this. I'm not a politician, and also just want to point out I'm not going to try and quote anything for verbatim. I'm just going off loose from memory. Um, but in the various reports that I watched yesterday and today, news reports from the East, what they all conclusively all said is that the Arab League of Nations voted to declassify Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. And what this implies, therefore, it was explained in their own words, is that I'm not saying in the Arab League's words, but in the news reporters' words, they said this has potentially very dangerous implications and uh, gloomy implications because, say, for example, if some type of war or conflict was to break out between Israel and Hezbollah, like we already see starting, that would mean that the Arab League of Nations might be compelled or feel compelled to retaliate against Israel. Okay, that's one major implication that they were relaying in the news. So and long story short, without overcomplicating this with politics and stuff, I learned a few things. I don't know all that much about the Arab League of Nations. I just did some research on what nations comprise them. It's basically like the upper part of Africa, many countries there, and the Arab Peninsula, I think it's called. Basically like that there. I think there's like 20 or 21 or something like that nations that comprise the Arab League. But a lot of the big names like Syria and this and that there are part of the Arab League of Nations. So what this means at the end of the day is basically what the Eastern reports said. They said that if a war breaks out or Israel does something to upset Hezbollah, or they attack Hezbollah or whatever it might be, if Israel steps on the toes of Hezbollah, there could be far worse repercussions. It may not just be Hezbollah firing back, it may be other nations. Okay, so, but this all goes right back into what I've been saying for the last few days, weeks, months, and years. But every day that goes by, we're getting one step closer and closer. You can't make this stuff up. I'm certainly not making this stuff up. I almost can't believe my ears and eyes because it's all happening. Okay, and as I've said in my recent videos and such, of all the Bible prophecies that were foretold over 2,000 years ago pertaining to, what would occur between, you know, the fall of the Second Temple and the very end of days, that basically 2,000 year span, all these prophecies that were given before that time period, so a long time ago, they all came true. There was like 25 of them. I went through in a video yesterday or the day before. All of these great prophecies, huge, big prophecies about nations rising and falling, big things, they all came true. And some of those prophecies were ones that God said, oh, there's going to be a certain number of years over which certain things will take place. And the ones that were time period dependent came true at the right time in the exact year and all that. So, I mean, basically, all the prophecies have come true. And there's only one left that is to come true. And that is when Gog Magog, the nations that Ezekiel names, and I'll say it again, he actually names off the nations that will comprise the hordes of Gog and Magog, the hordes of Gog, the legions of Gog and Magog. I'm only saying that because, sometimes closed captions will mistranslate things. So he names off the nations, right? And it was Cush, which is Africa. There was Syria, Persia, which is Iran or Iraq or both. It's this, and Togarmah, which is to the north of Israel, so that could be Lebanon or what is it, Turkey. But basically, all the nations that Ezekiel names are the Islamic nations, okay, who do in their own times, for their own reasons, oppose Israel. Okay, and theologically, the religions oppose one another anyways. But at the end of the day, the final step to occur is these armies, these various different nations who have all united under one cause, i.e. Gog Magog, that's the buzz term for it. They have one cause and they come in against their one enemy, Israel. Zechariah talks about this in chapters 12 and 14, or maybe just 14. I've got it open here. And Ezekiel in chapters 38 and 39. Okay, and even in the book of Revelation, it talks about where Satan is released from the pit. Just in case you don't know, a lot of churches twist around Revelations, but check out my videos, my channel, and my books and all that for a good breakdown of Revelations for everybody, proven with the scripture. But Satan's released from the pit just before the end, like 3 days before the end. He goes off, kills the two witnesses, and whether they're symbolic for something or not, who knows? It doesn't really matter, but it tells us that he kills them 3 days before the end. They're dead for 3 or 3.5 days, and then they resurrect during the resurrection, right? So Satan is released, inarguably, from his prison 3.5 days before the end, maybe 4, 3 days before the end. And when he's released, it says he'll go off to the four corners of the world and gather up the armies of Gog Magog. Okay, so in Ezekiel and in Revelation, we see that there are different peoples from around the world, different nations. Ezekiel specifies their different nations and names them. So that's the last step. When those opposing nations who oppose Israel come in to attack and oppose it, that's when God will arrive. That's what it says in Zechariah 14. So let's go and read that real quick, right? It says, "And I have gathered all the nations unto Jerusalem to battle, and captured has been the city." And, some bad stuff happens I wouldn't even get into, right? But gone forth has half the city in a removal. So I guess half the people will flee or be pushed out. And it says the remnant of the people are not cut off from the city. So basically half the people will leave and a large portion of people will remain in the city. But then it says in the next verse, it says, "And gone forth has God, and he has fought against those nations as in the day of his fighting in a day of conflict, and stood at his feet in that day on the Mount of Olives, that is before Jerusalem eastward, and cleft has been the Mount of Olives at its midst, to the east and to the west a very great valley, and removed has half the mount towards the north, and its half towards the south." And later on in verse 6, a few verses later, "And it has come to pass in that day, the precious light is not, it is dense darkness. And there has been one day, it is known to God, not day or night, and has been at evening time, there is light. And it has come to pass in that day, go forth to living waters from Jerusalem, half them unto the eastern sea, and half them to the western sea. In summer and in winter it is. And God has become king over all the land. In that day there is one God, and his name one." And then it goes on and how the land is changed into a plain. I mean, so much change is occurring, and obviously over a period of time, but it talks about that end days darkness, which the book of Revelation and various Tanakh prophets talk about. This is clearly the end of days that is being spoken about. God himself, it's not even talking about Messiah here, it's God himself comes and lights upon the earth, right? So, and in Judaism, this is a very famous passage. So this is talking about the end of days and how nations will fight against Jerusalem. And this will provoke, in a sense, or invoke or bring down Almighty God. Okay, he's coming down on his own decision, but you know what I mean. And then if we look at Ezekiel 38, I'm not reading the whole 2 chapters out, but it's all about Gog Magog coming out from the various lands. And it says, where is it? Persia, Cush, Put, I don't know how to pronounce it, that's Syria, with them, all of them with shield and helmet. So Persia, like I said, that's Iran and or Iraq. Cush is Africa outside of Egypt. Put, Syria, with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all it spans, the house of Togarmah of the sides of the north. Togarmah is above Israel, that's Lebanon or Turkey or both. either or, and all its bands, many peoples with thee. Be prepared, yea, prepare for thee, and so forth. So they're drawn out, sparing reading out the whole chapter. They're drawn out, so to speak, figuratively. They come out more so. God symbolizes as he's pulling them out with like a fish hook, right? They've been out mingling out wherever else, and he's going to pull them all out. Not that God is making this happen, or it's just figurative speech. Then it says here, after many days thou art appointed, in the latter end of the years thou comest in unto a land brought back from sword, a people gathered out of many peoples. And as I pointed out before, this passage here in Ezekiel 38 is a clear reference to the rebirth of Israel that it took place in 1948. Okay, it lied fallow. Well, it wasn't Israel for 2,000 years almost. The people of Israel had, Israel as a nation fell in the first century AD. The people went into exile largely for 2,000 years, and Islam ruled over Israel for over 1,260 years, and all that came to a stop in 1948 when Israel was reborn and the people started to return there, right? So Ezekiel 38 could only be talking about after 1948, and it says that Gog and Magog are going to swarm up over Israel to attack it after 1948. Okay, so it says, in the latter end of the years thou comest in unto a land brought back from sword, a people gathered out of many peoples, upon mountains of Israel that have been for a perpetual waste, and it from the peoples has been brought out and dwelt safely of all of them. And thou hast gone up as wasting, thou comest in as a cloud to cover the land, art thou and all thy bands and many peoples with thee. And I mean, like I said, I could read it, but I mean, it's just so much stuff to read here. Again, here lower down, it says, and thou hast come up against my people Israel as a cloud to cover the land in the latter end of the days it is. And I have brought thee in against my land in order that the nations may know me in my being sanctified. That's basically because God will come down, destroy all the wicked, do the judgment day, and show everybody who's boss. That's why, right? So this is the final things that are going to happen before God and Messiah arrive. That's literally the final domino, and all the other Bible prophecies have already come true. Okay, so when we look at this world news, we see that Israel is already in conflict with, Palestine and Hezbollah, and now we hear this next step of news yesterday and today with the Arab League of Nations decision. This is only pointing us further. I mean, right at this point here, we are literally at the steps. Okay, we are at the steps. All it's going to take. Okay, do you really think Israel is going to back down from anything? No, right? Israel, I highly doubt Israel will back down unless, I don't know, right? But I'm just saying, in most cases, I don't think Israel will back down unless it looks like overwhelmingly bad, if they don't. If it was wise for them to step down, I would agree they probably would. But I think in most cases, they probably wouldn't step down. And the logical conclusion is that if anything happens, some type of trigger event to anger one another, then we're basically going to see a potential rapid escalation. Not that I want this stuff to happen. It would be nice if the end of days could come all happy, but at the end of the day and at the end of days, Judgment Day isn't all happy. So we are really at the steps with all of this here. And I've been warning everybody. But at this point here, I mean, we are literally at the point here. All it's going to take is for Israel to launch one rocket in the wrong direction, so to speak. You know what I mean? Where their enemies don't want them to shoot, which is anywhere. But all it's going to take is for Israel to do one military action. You know what I mean? Whatever it might be. Some troops over here, some troops over there. Maybe, oh no, a battleship went over there, or a fighter jet flew over here. And it's going to be seen as an act of war. Or maybe they will launch a missile somewhere. Or maybe the Arab League of Nations, Hezbollah, will start making demands on behalf of Palestine and say, oh, if Israel doesn't pull out of Gaza by this date, then we're going to attack. There's so many things that could take place now. And all it's going to take is one little trigger event. And that type of trigger event could happen at any blinking second, any second. As I speak, it may have already started. That's how much we are at the doorstep for this. So, and the end result is one of two things, like I've said before, right? If the Bible's real, which every Bible believer wants to believe, then it means God and Messiah is going to become. If the Bible isn't real, it's still going to probably be the end of the world because it's going to start a nuclear war. Okay. And also when you got other countries like Korea and Russia, and I've got nothing against them whatsoever at all. You know what I mean? But and I'm not a politician or a news reporter, so I can't, factually relay everything that I've heard in the news properly. But, you know, it's not like they're in favor of Israel right now. So, it could be a global type of conflict. America's been pulled into this. That's all the corners of the world. Russia's up this corner, America's up that corner. Israel is kind of like in the middle. You got the nations around Israel who are opposing it, and Korea, but it's like all the corners. So it would be a global conflict, and it's kind of scary. And America's got NATO. That would bring in Europe and all of that as well. So, it would be a global conflict. It would be a global war, and any global war would just quickly resort to nuclear. It's just kind of scary that we could see something like this. People can't say, oh, this wouldn't happen because the world wars occurred. World War II occurred. So you can't say that wouldn't happen. You can't say people wouldn't drop nuclear bombs on cities because even America did that. You know what I mean? In Nagasaki, and blew up like 100,000 innocent people who had nothing to do with the war, vaporized them on the spot. And those were the good guys, America doing that. You know what I mean? Heaven forbid bad guys somewhere do something like that. So, you know what I mean? All I can say is get right with God, because one of two things is going to happen. Either, yep, the Bible's real and all these prophecies are coming true and it's not a coincidence and God's about to come. Okay. Or, and in that case, you better get ready and prepared, right? Or, God forbid, the Bible's not true and it's just a really big, weird coincidence how all these bogus Bible prophecies came true, which I highly doubt. I think it's more plausible that the Bible is true because so many of the prophecies came true. But like I said, if the Bible's true, God's about to come. If the Bible isn't true, then this is the biggest hairball of coincidences that anybody's ever seen, but it's still going to end up with basically the same synopsis, which is the end of the world. Okay, and ironically, just like the Bible says in the Old and New Testament, the end of the world would be, what is it, like plumes of smoke rising up, which you would see from missiles or meteors or volcanoes, right? But if people are launching nuclear missiles everywhere, okay, and they're blasting up dirt and blocking the sun, you could get darkness, you would get pillars of smoke, and you'd have the sky going fiery red. Those are the warning signs that the Old and New Testament say we would see in the end days. So, I mean, it's got to be that the Bible is real, because it can't be a coincidence all these things are coming true. You know what I mean? These prophecies are written 2,000 years ago. They didn't know what nations would exist then. Ezekiel didn't know that those nations would still exist. You know what I mean? Ezekiel wouldn't know that 2,000 years from now, those nations would be against Israel. Ezekiel didn't know that. All these other prophets didn't know these things, but they saw it in their prophetic vision or whatever, or communication with God, and they testified it, wrote it down, and passed it down for 2,000 years, and it's coming true. Okay, so don't say I didn't warn you. And not that I want anything bad like that to happen, but at any given second, something could trigger all this off. At any given second. Okay, any given second. I would like to think, okay, I would like to think that if Russia's reasoning for going into Ukraine and all that to start with was to root out Nazis, which are anti-Semites, I would like to think that on some degree, Russia should honor that and not be against Israel. Because if they went against Israel or attacked Israel, it would make them look very hypocritical. You know what I mean? That's just a logical point, and I'm sure that even they have thought of that. So anyways, it is what it is. But don't say I didn't warn you, folks. And I just find it kind of strange that the Western media is not reporting this yet. It's like they took a few days to report that an American-made missile fell in a tourist region of Crimea, which is part of Russia or whatever, I don't know. And, it's where Russians live and go to. And it injured like 100 and something people on the beach and all that. And the Western media didn't even report it. You couldn't even find it on YouTube for like a day or two. And then they started to trickle in the reports. Whereas the Eastern side of the world, everybody was talking about it hours after it occurred. Got video of it. The Western side of the world, not a peep. And it's the same type of thing with this here. In fact, I've read all this stuff is common and public knowledge, right? Nothing secret here. I mean, I read reports, I've had people tell me because they've read reports that, certain countries have been telling their people to flee. These, sorry, my fridge turned on. It sounded strange. Certain countries, I can't remember which ones, have been telling their citizens, hey, overseas, start coming back here, flee this country, don't stay there, blah, blah, blah. So is something on the books to happen? I don't know. Are they trying to keep people calm? I don't know. But all I can say is get ready, folks. That's all I could say. Israel is very powerful. America's pretty powerful too, but I hate to say it, but Russia is more powerful. And I think Russia would win if they went one-on-one, right? I hate to say it, but it's just true. Russia has superior weaponry. Even the head of the U.S. military was on record years ago testifying that Russia's Satan V missile, it's probably have a more advanced one now, it splits into like 32 nuclear warheads. Some of them are dummies, and they fly all over the place like this here. So when it launches, you can't track it. Even if you have a laser defense system, it's designed to basically be invincible against anything other nations have. So if Russia launched a fleet of those things at America or at the world, it would just be the end. There'd be no coming back from it. So, I would like to think that Russia and Putin, like I said, I have nothing against him or Kim Jong, but I would like to give them credit and think that they have reasoning and wisdom to them. They are running some very big and powerful nations, in advanced nations. So I would really like to think, and I give them credit, that they would want to avoid such a thing. In fact, I did see a news report with Putin giving a speech saying that he wants to take every measure possible to avoid a global conflict like what I'm talking about. So I just don't speak Russian, so I can prove that he did say what it said on the screen, but allegedly he said that. So let's just hope that everybody keeps their heads calm, all these world leaders, and that they don't go bonkers and overreact, because you can only fire nuclear missiles once and there's no coming back from it, right? And everybody with a brain cell knows that if somebody fires one nuclear missile, it's not going to stop there. Others are going to fire in retaliation, and it's going to be a chain reaction, and it's just going to get worse and worse. What is the point of poisoning our planet? Nobody wins if the planet is poisoned. Okay, nobody wins. It'll spread over with the winds in the atmosphere, and all that radiation will spread everywhere else on the planet and mess everybody else up. Then all these other countries are going to be spending billions and trillions of dollars because of all these medical bills, because everybody's getting cancer and mutating and having all these issues, right? Nobody needs this for the world, and all the food and the animals and the plants would just die off. There's absolutely no logical need to do anything like that. There's probably other weapons they could use other than nuclear. I mean, they've had other things for ages. I wouldn't even mention what they are, but other forms of technology that don't have to involve nuclear stuff and radiation. But anyways, folks, that's what it is. So let's just hope that as little bad happens as possible, but as much good happens as possible. And let's hope that God and the goodness comes as soon as possible, to put away the badness as soon as possible. That's the best way to put it. So anyways, folks, take care, but get right with God and all that there. Take care.